Yo, what up, Southeast fam? Good morning. It's good to be here with you guys, and so good to have you guys in the room. But also, it's good to welcome in our online community. I want to give a shout out to our online community watching wherever you are this morning. Thank you for letting us into your space each and every week. And also, we know about this family that we have that's out there that's an extensive family. And every so often we hear stories about different ones, different people that we hear out there. So I just want to give a personal shout out to Robbie, who's watching in Victoria, Texas. God bless you. Thank you for being part of our online family. And real quick, while I'm on the online family, I would like to just implore you, no matter how you watch church or how you come to church or attend and be a part of our family, I'd just like to ask that you jump onto our website, which is southeastcc.org, and view it through the player that's there, because we have a really cool feature on the side called the chat. I know most people, if you're like me, you blow it up and you watch full screen. But there's a chat feature that's there, and it's just a way that you can engage with the online community and with us and with our online pastor, which is Josh McBride. So if you don't mind, would you open that chat up and just go in there? You don't even have to put a lot of stuff, but just go in there and type in "yo!" ! Just so we know you're there. All right. Man, there's a lot going on. We're going to continue in the series that we're in. We're going to get going down that road here shortly, but I'm not going to say, man, we got a lot to get into, because I know when I'm on this side where you guys are and the pastor says that, I'm like, oh, we do? Like, we got a lot to get into? So I'm just going to say we got some stuff to get into, which we'll get into later. But we're going to be finishing up in the book of Acts. We're going to finish up on Acts 18, and we're going to start briefly in 19. And I got a story. I'm just going to start with a personal story. Like I guess Lindsay said before I came out here, my name's Chris Bullard. I'm the lead life groups pastor here. So, of course, there's a tie to that, into relationship. And I think these stories the passages that we're going to review today, I think would tie to this story. So I just want to share with you guys a little bit of a personal story. It wasn't too long ago, several years ago, where I was far from faith, and I wasn't really taking my relationship with the Lord as seriously as I should. And the Lord began to convict and call, and just like this gentle whisper over time. And He, through a series of circumstances, like I said, He led me into a church, led me and Chrissy into a church. And it was just the right church. It was a church that was pivoting and making a move towards relational discipleship. And it was exactly where we needed to be. And God reached us through that church and through those people there and helped us. And it wasn't long before we ended up getting invited to a life group, or a small group. We went to this life group, and we had that awkward kind of conversation that most people have. We pulled up to the house, and it's like we pull up to the house and we're in the car kind of like, are we going to go in? Are we doing this? Like, I don't know if you guys felt that way, but that's how we felt. We were still, like I said, just really starting to take our faith serious, and this was probably about 3 months into our little faith journey. And we said, yeah, okay, let's go in, let's give it a shot. So we went in, and when we went in, it was like what you'd expect, right? We walked in, it was exactly what we expected. There were people that didn't look like us, didn't sound like us. We were just different, right? We were different, and I wasn't really sure how that was going to work. So we went, and we had the group, had first night of group. It was great. I mean, it was okay. I guess I'm overselling it if I say great. It was okay, right? It wasn't earth-shattering. It wasn't like, oh my God, this is a revelation. But it was good enough for us to sit in the car and talk about it. So we talked about it in the car, and we said, man, are we going to come back? And we're like, I don't know. And then we decided, okay, yeah, we'll come back. And we made a commitment. We made a commitment to come back, and we came back, and we came back, and we came back. And it just got progressively better. It started out kind of surface, but then eventually it got deeper and deeper and deeper. And eventually those people loved and cared for us in ways that our friends who were lifelong friends just didn't seem to, or that wasn't really there. And it was probably about 3 or 4 months in to that experience where the leader, he asked me, he said, hey, bro, you want to go to lunch? I said, sure, I guess so. Yeah, let's go to lunch. So we went to lunch, and while we were at lunch, he said, hey, he was really reluctant to ask the question is what it was. He was super apprehensive. I could tell he was anxious. There was something going on in his spirit. I don't know what it was. I was like, bro, are you all right? What's going on? And then he says, well, no, not really. He said, I got something to ask you, and I don't really know how you're going to take it. He said, man, listen, there's a check in my spirit every single week because I take attendance, and I really appreciate you and Chrissy coming all the time, but I take attendance every week, because all good group leaders do. So he's like, I take attendance, and when I do, I notice you guys got different last names. And I said, yeah, we got different last names. And he said, oh, okay, cool. And I said, yeah, cool. And then he said, yeah, but y'all live together, right? I said, yeah, we live together. He said, oh, cool. I said, yeah, real cool. So anyway, so then he says, hey, brother, listen, man, I just want you to see this in the most non-legalistic way. I want to share truth, and I want to be loving, and I want to help you get under the umbrella of God's protection and favor. I want him to bless your union and your family. You guys got a beautiful family, and I just don't see how he can do that right now while you're living outside the umbrella of his protection. And I said, oh, okay. I said, thanks, man. I appreciate that. He said, well, thank you. And then I left. And then I went back to work, and then I called Chrissy, and she said, how was lunch? And I said, it was okay. She said, what'd he say? I said, he thinks we should get married. And she goes, oh my God, I got to go. So she hung up, and then she called me back 2 hours later, and she said, hey, you know what? I think he's right. And I'll get emotional thinking about it, but I said, yeah, you know what? I know he's right. I know he is. And Chrissy and I, we got married 28 days later because we got married 28 days later because someone was willing to stand in truth and frame it in love, and it helped me and her change the trajectory of our family and our legacy, and it was only because a life group leader stood in the gap and was bold enough and chose to be courageous. So anyway, so I think that story can tie to the passages that we're going to cover today. We'll see if we can't make those tie together. If not, I'm going to really try hard to force them to. Okay? All right, let's get into it. Our passage as we continue on our Acts series, this one's going to be 18 through 24. I'll read a little bit of the passage, we'll break a little bit of it down, and then we'll pull back out, and then maybe we'll get down in the weeds on it, but then we'll pull back out and kind of look at the overarch. So anyway, so Acts 18, 24 through 25, that's where we're going to start. All right, it says, now a Jew named Apollos, a native of Alexandria, came to Ephesus. He was an eloquent man. He was competent in the scriptures. He had been instructed in the way of the Lord. And being fervent in spirit, he spoke and taught accurately of the things concerning Jesus, though he knew only the baptism of John. That's interesting, right? He knew only the baptism of John. All right, context matters. That's right. I just wanted to see if we were catching on. Context matters, exclamation point, it does. So let's give you a little context. Who is Apollos? Apollos is an Alexandrian Jew. He's a native of Alexandria. He is an Alexandrian Jew, like I said, and then he goes to Ephesus after Paul's first visit. Now we know that he's well educated. We know that he's well versed in the scriptures. How do we know that? How do we pick that up? How do we know that? We'll find out in a little bit. He's Jewish. He holds to the teachings of John the Baptist. He said up to the baptism of John. That's significant. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Potentially, he spent some time in Jerusalem for feasts and festivals. He could have been in Jerusalem for some of those and then left, but it's pretty evident that he's missing a piece of the story. All right, let's talk about Alexandria. This is where he's from. Where's the dude from? Alexandria. It's the capital of Egypt. It was founded by Alexander the Great. It was a Greek and cultural economic center. It had, if you're looking on Travelocity at the time and you're like, hey, what attractions could we check out if we're there, right? If you were ever there around that time, what you would check out was probably Pharaoh's Lighthouse. It was one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. It also housed a legendary library that had nearly 1 million volumes in Jesus' day. It was the leading center, or leading city, I should say, for Roman academics. And then it was followed by Athens and Tarsus. Tarsus should sound familiar to us because that's where Paul was from. All right, so outside of Jerusalem, this is an important center for Judaism. Probably the most important center outside of Jerusalem. And then it also had a quarter of their population there in Alexandria that were Jewish. They were Jewish, so they had influence there. The Jewish rabbis went on to produce the Septuagint there. The Septuagint is the Greek translation of the Old Testament, and that was produced there. And that's where this guy is from. So he's educated, he's well-versed, and that's why, because he's from a city that values that stuff, right? All right, where's he heading to? He's heading to Ephesus. Ephesus is the capital city of the Roman province of Asia. There's about 300,000 people that are there in that city. It is a strategic city. It's steeped in idolatry. It was an important commercial center. It had a large harbor, and they had wealthy trade. It was a big, big commercial center. So you might say, okay, well, if I'm going to visit there, what can I see? Biggest tourist attraction here at the time probably would be the Temple of Artemis, and we have a picture of that. This is what it would look like in its day. That's the Temple of Artemis. It was also another one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. But for all these things that we amaze over and baffle over and all of these things, this is what it looks like today. If we can go to the next slide. Today, here's where it is. That's it today as it stands. So you may say, okay, well, who's this person worthy of such building, right? Of such a place to worship? Well, this was the daughter of Zeus, twin sister of Apollo, thought to be a protectress during childbirth. She was also thought of as a fertility goddess. In Paul's day, that building would have been already 4 centuries old. And on the innermost part of that, it housed a statue of Artemis, and this is what that statue would look like. You saw it on that first slide, but this is what it looks like closer. Remember, again, she's a fertility goddess. The worship to Artemis would include cultic prostitution. There would be hundreds of priestesses at the temple. And that's where our story is set, in this city, Ephesus. That's why I'm saying it's so steeped in idolatry. It's so steeped in idolatry. So just from that beginning where we see Apollos is introduced, that's where he's introduced into. And remember, we say that when you're introduced in the Bible, it's important, so we need to check that out. All right, so let's read on. Acts 18:26, it says, he began speaking boldly in the synagogue, right? Who's he? Apollos. Apollos preached boldly. I love that Apollos wanted to advance the mission. He had a message, and he wanted to advance that. And he started to, and he did it boldly. And I think that he had to do it boldly. For one, that's his personality. I believe he's just a passionate person, probably an Enneagram 8. And he's just passionate. And he boldly preaches, but also I think it's because of where he's at. So, we say context matters, reverse context matters too. Like where the receivers are, who is hearing the word, that also matters. That's why Paul says, I become all things to all men, right? So that they might know. All right, so he had a message, and he was preaching that message boldly. But here's the thing about his message. It was a deficient message. It was lacking full understanding, and he needed an update. He needed an update because, remember, it said he knew only up to the baptism of John. So God provides that update because he knows our needs even before we think or ask, right? So in Acts 18:26, he goes on to say, but when Priscilla and Aquila, these are Paul's friends, heard him, they took him aside and they explained to him the way of God more accurately. Now, Priscilla and Aquila, Paul's friends, we're not going to get too much into their story, but they're Paul's friends that are in Ephesus, co-workers, co-laborers. They taught in the synagogue. It would be a rotation that would happen. Just a rotation in the synagogues of teaching. And they heard Apollos up there, and you can imagine, they're like, oh man, this guy's preaching a similar message, but it was only one, again, up to John's baptism, which was a baptism for the remission of sins. It was one of repentance. It was one that pointed towards Jesus as the Messiah, but it was one that pointed towards Jesus as the Messiah only, but not the conquering king over death. Not the conquering king over death. He was missing that part of the message. 2 decades had passed since he heard his last message. So imagine, I don't know about you guys, I have an iPhone, but can you imagine missing 2 decades worth of updates? Right? I get mad when I miss one. It don't work right. But it's 2 decades that have passed since he's heard this message. But he's been boldly preaching that message and desperately going out there just trying to push that same message, which has been great. He's been great at doing that, but he was still lacking something. Again, the message was deficient. It was only good up to a certain point, and he needed that update. He desperately needed that update. All right. He received new truths about the cross, the death, the burial, and the resurrection. He received those new truths through Priscilla and Aquila. They shared with him these things. The truth about the cross, the death, the burial, and the resurrection. Important piece of the story, right? Knowing that Jesus is the Messiah is just not enough. It's just not enough to say, Jesus, you're Lord. You are the Lord. And if you proclaim that, great. Like we say, even like the Bible says, even the demons do, right? They acknowledge that. They do, but that's not enough. We've got to acknowledge the resurrection as well. That must be acknowledged. In John 11:24 and 26, Jesus is talking to Martha, and this is what he says to her. He says, I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me, though he shall die, he shall still live. And everyone who lives and believes in me shall never die. And then he looks at her, I believe, with all sincerity and just this intense gaze. And he says, do you believe this? Do you believe this? And I believe this is a question that we all have to ask ourselves at some point in time. I believe that there's a personal moment with Jesus, and he asks us that same question with that same intense gaze. And he says, do you believe this? Believe what? Believe that I am the resurrection and the life, both of them. Both of them. It's not just the one that points towards, it's also the one that points back to the victory at Calvary, the cross, the conquering king of death. Do you believe that's who Jesus really is? That's why Easter's our Super Bowl for Christians, right? Because we believe that and we want to celebrate it. We want to commemorate it. So Easter's a big deal to us for that very reason. Now, if you're just now considering belief in that, I'd love to chat with you after the service. Come find me. Apollos, he had tremendous zeal. He was preaching with tremendous zeal, but again, he lacked that full knowledge, needed the update. Priscilla and Aquila, they pick up on an incomplete message and they fill him in. They give him the essential gospel details, new truths that radically update the story for him. And they did the hard thing. I love that too about Priscilla and Aquila, is that they did the hard thing. Remember, Apollos is this guy who's eloquent and educated and speaking with such passion and fervor that they have to pull him aside and say, hey, man, your message is good, bro, but, it's a little off, right? So it took courage to do that. It really did. I believe it took a lot of courage to pull somebody aside like that and say, like, could you imagine pulling Pastor Aaron aside and saying, hey, dude, I got some observations, right? Maybe some of you do. Maybe you don't feel bad. Maybe some of you do. Anyway, but what I love too about this whole interaction between the two is that there's no indication, at least not in the text, of Apollos receiving it negatively. I love that. Like healthy leaders are willing to receive. They're willing to receive. And Apollos seems like a healthy leader. And the cool thing about Apollos is he was already a heavy hitter. He was already a heavy hitter, but getting this update, that took him to the next level. It took him to the next level. And with the fullness of the gospel message, he became a powerhouse like Paul. I believe there's a lot that could have been written about Apollos, but God chose otherwise. But just like there's a lot that could be written about many other people throughout history as well. But Apollos is mentioned, but I believe he's very much like Paul on the same level. And the question that I have for us today is, when might we, or you specifically, when might you have shared some new truth? When might you have shared new life? When might you have shared your own life or whatever, just to help somebody level up like that? That life group leader that had that conversation with me, he was courageous and he helped me level up. Man, did he help me level up. The things that God have done in my life since then, oh man, I can't even begin to tell you. But when have you been bold enough and chose to be courageous enough to share some of that new truth, a message that God's given you, a testimony that God's given you, a new truth that God's given you, till you can help someone level up like that? It's convicting. Or on the flip side of it, how about this? When have you allowed someone to speak into your life like that? That's even more convicting. Have you given someone the right? Have they earned the right? Have you given them permission to speak into your life like that to help you level up? Remember what we said a few weeks ago, pride puffs up, but love builds up. When have you allowed someone to love you in a way that would build you up? Let's keep reading. Acts 18:27 through 28. And when he wished to cross to Achaia, the brothers encouraged him and wrote to the disciples to welcome him. When he arrived, he greatly helped those through grace had believed, for he powerfully refuted the Jews in public, showing by the scriptures that Christ was Jesus. Apollos goes from a good leader to a great leader, and I think he does it by knowledge, desire, and margin. The knowledge led to the desire to advance the mission, and then he creates the margin. He creates that margin. He goes to the church in Corinth, which is where we were talking about that region, and then the Ephesus church, the brothers there, they back him up. They back him up, and he proves to be a great benefit, just like that leader was to me, a great benefit. But only by God's grace. That's an important piece, too, that I don't think we should miss, that only by God's grace. As a quick aside, our definition for a disciple here at Southeast, I'm not sure if we're all familiar with it, but my hope is that we all would be. But we take the definition of a disciple right out of Scripture. We believe the definition is in the invitation. Jesus says, "Come, follow me, and I will make you fishers of men." That's the invitation. So our definition is one who's following Christ and one who is being changed by Christ and on mission with Christ. That's our definition of a disciple, and it comes right from that invitation. And it's important to note, too, that he alone does the changing. He alone does that changing. Jesus says, I will make you fishers of men. And that is something that I hope that we all can just hopefully articulate one day. What's your definition of a disciple at Southeast? What does that mean? Oh, easy. Following Christ, being changed by Christ, and on mission with Christ. It's simple. All right. But the thing about all of that is we can only own the effort. That's all we can do is own the effort, and we got to let God handle the results. Because God's going to handle the results, right? Man makes his plans, but the Lord determines his steps. So we can own the effort, let God handle the results. Apollos owned the effort by building on the foundation that Paul laid with God's results. Let's jump out of Acts, get out of the weeds, and look into Corinthians. We're going to drop in there. This is what Paul says in 1 Corinthians 3:4-6. He says, "For when one says, I follow Paul, and another says, I follow Apollos, are you not merely human? What then is Apollos? What is Paul? Servants through whom you believed, as the Lord assigned to each." I think that's an important part too. As the Lord assigned to each. And I think about that life group leader that spoke into my life. I must have been assigned to him by the Lord, right? Anyway, and then Paul goes on, he says, I planted, Apollos watered, but God gave the growth. God's the one who does the growing. Again, own the effort, let God handle the results. And then further on in that same passage, further down, it's 1 Corinthians 3:9-11. Paul goes on and he says, "For we are God's fellow co-workers. You are God's field, God's building, according to the grace of God given to me. Like a skilled master builder, I laid a foundation, and someone else is building upon it." Ministry leaders, listen up. Let each one take care of how he builds upon it. Let each one take care of how he builds upon it. For no one can lay a foundation other than that which is laid, which is Jesus Christ. Paul respects Apollos. He sees him as a co-laborer, as a contemporary, a brother. He's a co-worker. It's clear that Paul respects him. He's cool with Apollos as long as Apollos keeps the main thing, and that's Jesus. He's got to keep Jesus the foundation and the focus. And as long as he does that, he's fine with that. He's cool with Apollos because following anyone else is just foolish. Following anybody else is foolish. By the way, I'll say this. I'll make a statement that may rub some people the wrong way, but respect spiritual authority. Respect spiritual authority. But never make it your idol. Never make it your idol. I love the fact that we have a huge church family online and in the room every single week. But if you're here because you're following one person, that's just foolish. That's just foolish. If you're not following the person that is Jesus Christ, you're here for the wrong reason. You're here for the wrong reason. So anyway, I would encourage you to do business with that if that's you. But again, respect spiritual authority, absolutely. But Just don't make it your idol. And I love Apollos. I love back to him, just to jump back to Apollos. I love that he had powerful arguments. I love that he's passionate. He's very dedicated to just advancing the word and the mission. And he's so passionate that he's refuting the Jews in this. And I also love the fact that he lets the word do the correcting. He uses the scriptures to validate that Jesus is the Messiah. And he does the hard thing, and he stands in truth. And I love that. Just standing in truth. All right, before we move on, again, don't want you to miss that one part. Just, he greatly helped those who through grace had believed. It's just a subtle reminder that the free gift of salvation is available to all who will believe. Belief in what? Belief that Jesus is the Messiah and the resurrection. You can't talk about belief without talking about baptism because they're inseparable. But before we move on from that, I just want to say, like I said, if that's you, if you're in a place where you're considering belief or considering baptism, we would love to chat with you. Come out and see the folks at the Connections area, and we would love to talk to you about what some next steps would look like. But again, belief and baptism are inseparable. We've heard Aaron say that before. It's true even in these passages. That first ending that we were talking about there in Acts 18, that closes, that was talking about belief. And now we're going to move on to baptism because here's what it says in Acts 19, 1 through 5. Now we're moving on to Paul. We kind of close the chapter on Apollos and we move on to Paul. It says, and it happened that while Apollos was in Corinth, Paul passed through the inland country and he came to Ephesus. And there he found some disciples and he said to them, did you receive the Holy Spirit when you believed? And they said, no, we have not even heard that there is a Holy Spirit. And he said, into what then were you baptized? And they said, into John's baptism. And Paul said, John baptized with the baptism of repentance, telling people to believe in the one who was to come after him, that is, Jesus. And then on hearing this, they were baptized in the name of the Lord Jesus. Okay, so Paul runs into 12 Jewish dudes, and they were claiming to be disciples, but their gospel is deficient as well. The story is deficient as well, and Paul picks up on that. And, like Apollos, like I said, they were just unaware not only of the death, the burial, and the resurrection, but also of Pentecost, because they're like, we didn't even know there was a Spirit to be given. I don't know about you, but I feel like I missed out on something big. I'd be like, what? There's a Spirit? How do I get this? Right? So anyway, so it doesn't take Paul to pick up on that, and he notices that fairly quickly, I would assume, at least by the text it indicates that. And why? I think that it's something that we say around here. Relationship matters. You may have seen that on some shirts or some stickers or maybe hanging over a urinal somewhere, but from those posters. But it's true. Relationship does matter. It's a thing that we say around here because we believe that it matters to God. We believe that it matters. It should matter to us as well because of that. And because relationship does matter, we say this. We say time and proximity equal relationship. I don't know if you guys believe that to be true, but we believe that time and proximity equal relationship. You spend enough time around somebody in close proximity, you're going to have a relationship. You just will. And the thing about proximity is this. Proximity breeds perspective. Proximity will always breed perspective. The more time you spend around somebody, the more things you notice about them. You get different facets of their character and their beliefs and all of everything that makes up their being. So proximity breeds perspective. Or I could also say it this way, relationship reveals. Relationship always reveals. And that's what's happening here. Paul begins to be in proximity with these guys, and he's getting a different perspective, and it's revealing something. And he picks up on the fact that they don't have Spirit. Why? Because you know who's full of the Spirit. And you know who's full of something else, right? I don't know about you guys, but whenever you're around somebody that's full of the Spirit, you know if they're full of the Spirit or not. You can see it, you sense it. Let's jump into Romans real quick. Romans 8:5. This is what Paul says about the Spirit. He says, "For those who live according to the flesh set their minds on things of the flesh. But those who live according to the Spirit set their mind on things of the Spirit." He'll go on to say in that same passage further down, "You, however, are not in the flesh, but in the Spirit, if in fact God dwells in you." Paul was picking up on that perspective, an incomplete one, an incomplete perspective through just being in proximity with those guys, and he sensed it. Something was off. And what I love about Paul is he's genuinely curious. He's genuinely curious, asking the hard stuff. Again, just like that life group leader did for me, he was genuinely curious. Hey, dude, you guys got different last names. Hey, dude, are you guys married? Hey, dude, you guys live together and you're not married. Right? So he was genuinely curious and he asked those hard things. And that's what Paul does too. And what I love too is that he doesn't shame them for it. He didn't shame them. And that leader didn't shame me either. He doesn't shame them. He just informs them and then he invites them. He informs and invites them. He shares truth in love. Truth in love. Like there's nothing wrong with truth. We got to stand on the truth. But if we don't frame it in love, no one cares about our truth. No one cares about our truth if we don't do that. He does the hard thing though, and he says that to these guys. He starts asking about this baptism and then the Spirit and if they knew any of that stuff. But I love it because he calls them up, not out. And there's a difference between calling someone up and calling someone out. And I know that we've all been in that place where we felt like called up, and we all been in that place where we felt called out. And that's what Paul does, and I love that. Like Apollos, he was lacking the full story. He needed discipleship, and Paul gives them discipleship. How does he do it? He does it by preaching Christ crucified. In 1 Corinthians 1 through 18, this is what it says. It's going to be a minute because it's a long one, but it's worth it. He says, "For the word of the cross is folly, it's foolish to those who are perishing, but to those of us who are being saved, it is the power of God. For it is written, I will destroy the wisdom of the wise, and the discernment of the discerning I will thwart. Where is the debater of this age? Has God not made foolish the wisdom of the world? For since in the wisdom of the world, the wisdom of God, the world did not know God through wisdom, it pleased God through the folly of what we preach to save those who believe. For Jews demand signs and Greeks seek wisdom, but we preach Christ crucified." They didn't know that part of the story. And he says, we preach Christ crucified. A stumbling block to the Jews and folly to the Gentiles, but to those who are called, both Jews and Greeks, Christ, the power of God and the wisdom of God. For the foolishness of God is wiser than men, and the weakness of God is stronger than men. Amen? Paul preaches Christ crucified. They responded and they're baptized in the name of Jesus. They become born again. How do they become born again? They follow the pattern that was given in Acts 10. Hear the word, believe in Jesus, immediately receive the Spirit, and then be baptized. Belief and baptism are inseparable. Again, it's biblical. We can see it all throughout Scripture. Both were water baptisms. That's important to note. Both of these were water baptisms, but Paul explains the difference of a baptism of repentance and one that was being baptized in the Spirit. And it's reminiscent of the conversation that Jesus has with Nicodemus, where he's trying to explain to him about being born again. And Nicodemus, his mind is just blown. He doesn't understand, how do I get back in my mother's womb? I'm a grown man. Like that. So anyway, that's kind of what that conversation makes me think of. But John's baptism, again, was one. Now, we're talking about John the Baptist. He's baptizing. Remember when he was baptizing folks? His baptism was one that looked ahead to the prophesied Messiah. It was important at the time. At the time, it was important. But this baptism, this was one that looked back, not ahead, but back to the finished work on the cross, the victory of the resurrection. And that is important forever. Forever. And John says it best himself in John 3:30, where he says, "He must increase and I must decrease." And this is the difference. We see this happening right now. This is the difference between John's teachings fading and Jesus' teachings flourishing. Jesus' teachings are catching on and it's flourishing. Let's jump back into the text. Acts 19, 6 through 7. It says, "And when Paul laid his hands on them, the Holy Spirit came on them, and they began speaking in tongues and prophesying. There were about 12 men in all." So that happened, and they received the Spirit. So you might say, well, why the laying on of hands? Why the speaking in tongues and the prophesying? Right? So why all of that? This is one last echo of Pentecost. One last echo of the day that the Spirit came and indwelled on God's people. It's the last mention of tongues in Acts. This was not normative. This wasn't prescriptive. It wasn't to be done forever. It's never seen again. Luke records what happened. You got to remember, Luke is a physician. He's also a historian. He wants to get an accurate account of all the things that had happened. So that's what he's doing. He's recording what happened, not what was to always happen. The other part, the key piece of this was that the reason that this happened was that it authenticated the salvation of those believers. Those believers, that salvation, that baptism was authenticated for those believers through that act. And also it validated Paul's apostolic authority. It validated the fact that he was an apostle of God. All right, so if you followed that pattern in Acts 10, if you've heard and you believe and you receive, then you have the Spirit of God in you. You have the Spirit of God in you. That's weighty. That's weighty to think about. Because every time we talk about this concept, or every time I hear this concept talked about, Spirit of God in me, and sometimes it's hard to believe, but a lot of times it's really easy to believe because I see it in others and other people that I've surrounded myself with. They'll call it out in me and I'll call it out in them, and that's iron sharpening iron and all that stuff. But I think about the Old Testament heroes of our faith, right? Take your pick, whoever you want. But I think about this idea that when I get to heaven, I just want to run up to Moses and be like, hey, Moses, yo, man, what was that like? What was that like for God to be with you? That was awesome, man. Him talking to you through a burning bush. That was cool when He's parted the sea. What was that like, man? And I believe He'd be like, with all sincerity, just like, yeah, whatever. We'll get to that later. You tell me what it was like to have the Spirit of God in you every day. We sat around and prayed and prayed and prayed. We were on our face a lot, praying that He'd show up. And thank God He did. He showed up when He needed to show up. But for you, you've had the Spirit of God in you all the time. You tell me what that was like. You tell me what you did with that. What did you do with the Spirit of God in you? And then I'll sit there and probably just twiddle my thumbs. Man, I don't know. I got to preach a couple times. But you know what I'm saying? Like the Spirit of God is in us. And that's a weighty thing. And the response, not just the responsibility, but also the power that's in that because of the resurrection. We believe in that. In the day of Pentecost, we have the Spirit in us. So what are we doing with the Spirit of God in us? Wherever you're at, again, if you're believing or considering baptism. Oh, speaking of baptism, we have a few today. There's going to be a couple after service, one next service, and then some after the service too. Would you guys do us a personal favor? Next time someone's baptized, this is a church family. We have a big church family. And whenever someone gets baptized, man, I'd love for us to just celebrate like nobody's business, to blow the lid off this place, to stand up and to celebrate when someone comes out of that water because it represents life change. It may seem like insignificant because over here in this pool, like somebody's just getting dunked and then they're coming back up. But that's not insignificant. What God's going to do in their life after that is so significant. And we need to celebrate that because it's worthy of celebrating. What gets celebrated gets repeated. So I'd love for us to just celebrate that and make it a big deal because it is. It is. I'm not talking about fake enthusiasm or anything. I'm talking about being genuinely excited for what God's doing in the life of a believer. All right, so let's jump back in and finish with the last two verses. All right, Acts 19, 8 through 10 says this, and he entered the synagogue, and for 3 months spoke boldly, reasoning and persuading them about the kingdom of God. But when some became stubborn and continued in unbelief, speaking evil of the way, which is Christians, before the congregation, he withdrew from them. He just said, peace out. He withdrew from them, reasoning daily in the hall of Tyrannus. This continued for 2 years. For 2 years, so that all the residents of Asia heard the word, both Jews and Greeks. All the residents. So I think it's important to note that you got Paul, he goes and gives this synagogue a chance, right? He's like, hey, I'm going to go to the synagogue and I'm going to just preach the word there. And he's preaching boldly. And then he gets some kickback. From who? From the religious folks in the synagogue. And then he's just like, all right, look, I'm not going to continue to waste my time here. I got to go. And then he goes to this potentially pagan hall. It's called, like I said, the Hall of Tyrannus. It was a lecture hall, essentially, somewhat like a school. It'd probably be used in the daytime, in the morning, and then in the evening. So Paul had from about 11 to 4 in that window to teach there, and he teaches daily so that all could receive. All, and that's what it says in the text. It goes on to say that all who were in Asia, Greeks and Jews, were able to receive. And I think that's so important, right? We don't want to be that place. We don't want to be putting out people who are trying to spread the word. We want to invite those people in. But it's interesting, though, that it's a pagan kind of place of a lecture hall or a school that he's able to do this for 2 years. Why? Why for 2 years? I believe that there's a reason why. I believe that Paul is passionate, but he's also, if anything else, he's authentic. And authenticity always has an audience. Authenticity will always have an audience, and Paul knows that. And these two passages, they connect to one another because I believe speaking boldly is a connecting theme. We see it in Apollos. We also see it in Paul. Apollos powerfully refuted the Jews, and Paul argued persuasively. Both had so much passion. And then Priscilla and Aquila, they share truth and love. Proximity breeds perspective. And Paul does the same thing with those 12 disciples that he runs across. Time and proximity equal relationship. Remember we said relationship matters? It does. Well, time and proximity are what equal relationship. Relationship plus intentionality, now that equals discipleship. And we, as Christians, as followers of Christ, as disciples, if we're going to follow that definition, then we have got to be intentional even when it's uncomfortable. Especially when it's uncomfortable. I believe we got to embrace the inconvenience of being uncomfortable because it matters. It matters. It mattered in my life when that guy was able to embrace the uncomfortability of sitting across the table from me, because I could have flipped the table over and just been like, who do you think you are, man? Trying to call me out. But no, he had already earned the right. He had more relational equity in that time than he knew. So I wasn't going to storm out of there. I was willing to receive. So we got to be intentional, again, just about getting uncomfortable and getting out of our comfort zone, because that's what these others did. Apollos, Priscilla, Aquila, Paul, these were people that were more in love with the mission than with their own comfort. They were more in love with the mission than their own comfort. What mission, you might ask? The disciple-making movement of Jesus. That's what mission. That's what mission. They weren't interested in holy huddles, personal preferences, or comfort. How comfortable are you right now? If you're so comfortable and you're not unsettled in any way, perhaps you're too far removed from the mission. Maybe. Make the mission your main thing. Make the mission the main thing again. Fall out of love with your comfort. And it's hard because there's a lot of comfortability around. But we got to fall out of love with our own comfort and get unsettled for Jesus. Because God's not going to call us to comfort. And we're going to be uncomfortable when following Jesus. That's a promise. That's a promise. It's going to be awkward and weird and hard because relationships are messy, but they're important. And fighting for a relationship is a worthy battle. Now, you may get some relational scars through that because it hurts when you engage in relationship, because you get in time and proximity with somebody, and that proximity reveals you're going to see some things about people that you didn't want to see. I know of people, if they get close to me in that proximity and we spend time together, they'll probably see some things they don't want to see. But I'm hoping they'll stick around and love me through it. So again, fighting for a relationship is a worthy battle. Thank you to the courageous who do that, who step in relationally. I'm going to ask this real quick. If you're a life group leader here, would you stand up for a second? If you lead a life group, would you stand up? Man, just stand up for a second. Thank you, guys. Thank you guys for leading here at Southeast. These life group leaders, they do that very thing every single week. They sacrifice their time, their effort, their energy, sometimes monetary, but they sacrifice their comfort. They step into hard spaces with people. They have difficult conversations. They do all this for the sake of spiritual growth of others, for the sake of spiritual growth of others. Family, these are disciple makers among us. These are people who are willing to step in and fill the void, fill the gap. Like I said, I don't mean to keep bringing the leader up that spoke to me, but man, I don't know where I'd be in my life if it wasn't for that guy, if he wasn't courageous enough to just step in and be willing to have a hard conversation. But he did, and thank God he did, because here we are today. And because of that, I will encourage leaders to continue to do the same. I'm pushing leaders. I'm trying to coach up leaders and be in time and proximity with them too, and make sure that they filled up so that they can pour into others. And if you're not in a group, that's okay. It doesn't mean that you're not part of our family. It doesn't mean that you're not part of Southeast. But we'd love for you to get into a group so that you can get in some time and proximity with people who have this mind frame, people who are willing to step up or call people up, not out, and do the hard thing. So if you'd like to get engaged in a life group, if you'd like to get connected to a life group, come see us at the life groups area. We'd love to talk to you about that and get you connected in proximity with some of those people. All right, let's tie this thing down. I got a couple of implications and then we can wrap it up. All right, implication number one is that either Jesus is the Lord of everything, or he's the Lord of nothing. You may have heard that before. It's pretty simple, but it's so true. Either he's the Lord of everything or the Lord of nothing. Belief in Jesus as the Messiah is only half the equation. The death, burial, and resurrection must be acknowledged as well. And it's got to be acknowledged to receive the Holy Spirit that we have. And again, I just encourage you to ask that question. What have you done with the Holy Spirit in you? It's good stuff to think about all week. Implication number two is this. Relationship reveals, like we said, time and proximity. Relationship reveals, but courage always demands to be chosen. Courage is something that you have to choose, and it's always going to demand to be chosen. Because courage might be the opposite of fear, but it dang sure ain't the absence of it. It's not the absence of fear. It's a choice, and courage will always demand to be chosen. It's deliberately choosing to put yourself in harm's way. It's being vulnerable. Think of first responders. They run into danger by choice. They have a choice, and they make it, and they have courage. But we got to do the same as well in our relationships. We got to have relational courage. Why? Because there's too much at stake. There's too much at stake. Think if that guy never said anything. I don't know where I'd be. Who knows? But he chose courage and stepped in. All right, implication number 3, real always recognize real. It's just true. Real always recognize real, spirit recognize spirit. Some things you just can't fake. This is one of those things. You can't fake this. If you have spirit, people know. And again, if you have something else, people know that too. But it's one of those things that will always be true. All right, last implication is this. Implication number 4 is that God has creative liberty over your story, over his story, and what you think your story is. So just like Apollos, he needed to receive that update. He needed that update. It was desperate. It was essential for him to go on. And think about if Apollos said, you know what, I got God figured out. I'm good. I don't need an update. I'm good. Have you seen me preach? I'm powerful. Right? He was bold and eloquent and smart and all of those things. But he still was willing to receive, and he received that update, and then God did so much more through him. So again, God has the creative liberty. It's his story. So we don't have God figured out. It's his story. And that's the tension that we're living in. We're living in an unfinished story with a definite ending that's already been written. How do we live in that tension? Our job between now and then is just to wait well. To wait well. How do we wait well? We live in the baptism that points back to Jesus and the victory over death, and we trust in God, and we count on his promises to be true, and just his grace. We receive it. We receive it. At Southeast, every single week we take communion together, and we're going to get ready to take communion. And as we do, as we get ready and we rip off that little cellophane paper, whatever, what I'd love for you to do is to consider this. Just pray to Jesus and ask him, who in my life, in my circle of influence, do you want me to share some truth with? Some new life, some new truth, some new habits. Who do you want me to invest in? Who do I need to choose relational courage in and step into a hard space? Some of you have been waiting a week or two to have that conversation. Some of you have been waiting years. I want you to know that having that relational courage, like I said, there's too much at stake. There was a time in my life when I needed some people to have relational courage around me, and they didn't. And there was too much at stake. And a lot happened. And I pay the consequence of sin And I just wish at that time that I had somebody around me to speak some truth to me, to call me up. And for that reason, I committed to God. I said, God, I will never be a coward relationally. I will speak truth, and I'll frame it in love, and I'll make sure that it's palatable for the people that I'm sharing that truth with. I'll make sure that I've earned the right to speak into their life, and I'll also be receptive of people trying to speak into my life. So as you pray with the Lord, just consider those things. Who do you need to speak truth to? And who do you need to allow them to speak truth to you because you've been at it so long and you've let pride puff up and you're not willing to receive? Who do you need to let your guard down because you know that they're speaking from a place of love and you know that they love you and they're not trying to hurt you? But if they do hurt you, that's okay too, because I love the fact when people are, they love me enough that they're willing to hurt me when it's necessary. They love me enough to hurt me when it's necessary. Are you willing to be in that space? Oh, gosh. Lord. On the night that Jesus was betrayed, he took some bread and he broke it and he said, "This is my body, which has been given for you. Whenever you eat this, do so in remembrance of me." And in the same way, he took the cup. He said, "This is the cup which represents the blood of the new covenant. Whenever you drink this, do so in remembrance of me." Let's pray. Father in heaven, God, we come before you just to acknowledge the fact that you're worthy and we're needy. God, we are so needy of relationship. It's how you reach us, one of the ways that you speak directly to us. But God, if we're void of courage, if we don't make that choice to be courageous, because courage isn't just found. We don't just find courage. We have to choose it. So God, I pray that for us, for me specifically, and for all of these, Lord, that we would choose courage in our relationships, that we'd be relationally bold and take that step, that first step of having honest, hard, tough conversations with people that we know that we need to have them with. And I also pray, God, that we're willing to receive, that we have a heart that's humble enough to receive whenever you're trying to speak to us through someone else. God, we love you. And we just ask that your grace and your mercy fall upon us this week, because without you, we're nothing and we need you.